and introduce him to the panel. Go ahead and unmute yourself. There you are, Joseph.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are just so thrilled that you could be part of this event. You know, it's been a number of years since you worked on this film. I think it was created in 2010. You know, what can you share with us about how it feels today for you to see the film?
Oh, well, it's been an ongoing effort. We're really delighted that the film has been used as much as it has. You know, we have an active outreach called Going Blind and Going Forward that has been absolutely terrific. Excuse me. Sorry. We're just delighted that the film has been able to help so many people. There's not a lot out like it. There's another film that's similar called Vision Portraits by Rodney Evans, and which is a film that you may want to show to your membership as well. And by the way, it's interesting. Our relationship with your organization goes back to the very beginning of the release of the film. And when you were called the New Hampshire Association for the Blind, I got in touch with your leadership because you had shown the film, gosh, I think 11 times in 3 months, which seemed like an awful lot for a tiny organization and in a tiny state. And the wonderful people that were leading the organization at the time said, well, people in New Hampshire really want the information. And you had put together a wonderful outreach in the local theaters, and your screenings worked as support groups, really. And you were able to get local ophthalmologists to come and watch the film and then sit in on panels, and then they would go back to their practices on Mondays and say, oh, we had a really interesting experience. Did you know that we had low vision therapists in this town over and that town over? And patients seem to be really getting a lot out of it. And they'd say to their colleagues, I think we should be referring more patients over there. And so the effort grew organically, which couldn't have been better for all of us. And I was just so impressed by the work that you guys did and have continued to do. And it was wonderful to get back in touch.
That's wonderful. Well, and that's what we're trying to model this evening. So we do have many eye care professionals from the state joining us for the event. And, we're trying a virtual version of that because that's the world we're in now. So we're happy that we're able to actually extend our reach a little bit. Individuals who might be challenged driving from one end of the state to another, or if they're out of state, might have joined us this evening too. So it's great. We love to continue that organic growth that you share.
Fantastic.
Can you tell us how you identified some of the characters to participate in the film? How did you find them?
Well, actually, Jessica, what happened was, as I say in the film, my doctors weren't telling me what I needed to know, which was my biggest fear, is what happens when the rest of it goes. And so I started talking to people on the street, people with dogs and canes, and saying, what happened to you? And how did you make the adjustment? And the stories were so fascinating that I thought, this is more interesting than just my own personal need to know. This is an insight into a secret world, a world that I'd been passing all my life. I'd been passing people with dogs and canes all my life on the street, and I had no idea of what they were doing, how they were coping, what they were living with, and how they were adjusting. And it was remarkable. And I felt, honestly, a certain level of shame that I was so totally unaware. And excuse me, it's very dry in here. So
it's amazing what we missed that's right out in front of us, right?
Yeah. And so I decided to make the film, And so Jessica Jones was one of the people that I'd stopped on the street. And it was interesting because just before we started to shoot, I had met Jessica when she was training her guide dog chef. And she lived just a few blocks around the corner from me. And so just before we're starting to shoot, she said, you know, Joe, I don't think you should be using me as a character. And I said, oh, really? Are you just too attractive? Are you, are you too funny? Are you too clever? Are you too empathetic? Or is the dog too funny and too cute? And she said, I don't know. I don't think you understand. She said, I am not the face of blind. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you met me fully employed, walking my dog, training my dog on the street, traveling from lower Manhattan to the Bronx, which is quite a distance, by myself on the subway every day
Yep.
to teach children art. That's not the face of blind. The face of blind is who I was 2 years ago, which was afraid to move, basically staying in my bedroom all the time, terrified to move. That's the face of blind. And so I said, well, let's change the face of blind to who you are today. And so that's what we've been trying to do. And that's been
almost, would you call it a stigma, maybe trying to remove a stigma that comes with it? Or how would you speak to it?
It's more than a stigma. Well, what she's done for me and what the other people in the film have done for me is what I guess we're trying to do for everybody. I've continued to lose my vision. I'm 77 now, and I've been losing vision now for 30 years, 34 years. And so I'm totally blind in my left eye. I've got like this much vision, like upper quadrant left in my right eye. I'm getting cane training now. And my vision, my field of vision is going south very, very fast. And during one operation a few years ago, I lost all of my vision because of a bleed. But because of the people that I met doing the film, I wasn't terrified. And I was told the vision would come back. And I believed my doctors, of course, but I felt if it didn't, I could handle it. And I could handle it because the people I'd met doing the film handled it. And they explained to me how they handled it. And I felt that I could do that. And, they were modeling behavior for me. And I understood, pretty intimately how people were doing things. And it was the greatest gift I could have given to myself, was to have made this film and gotten to meet these people and know them and become friends with them, and to understand what the journey is really like, and what the difficulties are, what the learning curve is, and what the triumphs are, and the realities of learning new skills. That you can look at it as a horror, or you can look at it as an adventure that you can get through. And speaking of adventures, Steve Vasquez, who we left just getting used to his new accommodations, he didn't make the premiere of the film back in 2010 because he was out climbing a mountain.
Oh, and wow.
He has since climbed on every continent in the world several times, and he's now a motivational speaker. And he's so what I had said, I had no doubt that he'd certainly learn all of the skills. He absolutely did.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, and like you said, kind of changing the face of blind.
Yeah.
He's helping with that charge. That's amazing. Yeah. So what are your, and I just want to reference the audience. Don't forget about the chat box. If you have any questions for Joe. Joe, one of your followers from Seattle, Washington has dialed in. She's on your email list. So we have folks from all around the country who are joining us this evening. But what are your goals today, Joe?
Well, what we're hoping is that since the film started, well, even before, we've been on a mission to get ophthalmologists to refer patients with irreversible progressive vision loss to low vision therapists early and regularly. And when we started all of this, many ophthalmologists had never heard of low vision therapy. And if they had, they would refer after someone had lost like 95% of their vision, which we felt was criminal. And I was at a conference a few years ago in Guadalajara, and I was very heartened to hear people mentioning low vision options, even in scientific sessions. This was just a couple of years ago. And everyone seemed to know what low vision options were, and people were referring. And then just a couple of years ago, we were hired to make a film called There Is Something You Can Do. And it's a short video, about 6 minutes, aimed at ophthalmology residents, distributed by the American Academy of Ophthalmology, stating specifically that early referral to low vision therapy is the standard of care now, and so it's a huge step,
right?
A huge step from where we began, and not in that much time. So right. I think we've been incredibly successful. Obviously, we weren't the only people, pushing for that, but we're one of the major people. And I think meeting the people that we've shown in Going Blind to ophthalmologists has been very helpful. So like we've been showing the film in medical schools and in residency programs and all the rest. It hasn't been just in service organizations.
Right. Well, and one of our other panelists this evening is Dr. Dorothy Hitchmoth, and she is an eye care specialist and advocate. And I bet she has a few things to say about referrals. So I'd like to open it up to Dr. Dorothy for a second.
Yeah, and thanks so much for having me. And so nice to meet you, Joseph. I did enjoy the film. I was savoring tonight because I had never seen the movie. I kind of wanted to be fresh and have an opinion right out of the rolls, as they say. So, for me, the low vision and blind journey is probably a little bit different than some eye docs. You may not be able to see the background of where I'm sitting, but there's a beautiful lady, if I do my camera like this, up in one of those wedding photos, which is my grandmother.
Yes.
And, she went blind in the last couple of years of her life. And this is one of the most amazing, gracious, patient people that I know, and who gave birth to 10 children at home in her own bed, by the way. Just, an amazing person. And my journey and introduction to vision loss was her before I was a doctor. And I thought there must be a better way. That's all I remember thinking. There must be a better way. How could we have done so horrible in a first world country in relatively modern times? Of course, this is back in the 80s.
Right.
But, it was from that initial inspiration that, I thought, yeah, this is what I need to dedicate my life to doing, and ultimately became really a retina specialists and medical specialists, but just like you show on the film, it was like watching my own patients. And it reflected all of the stories that I certainly hear every day. And of course, the VA I spent 22 years in the VA, and the VA sort of has advanced programs, certainly more, I think, than the general public for low vision. And I was fortunate enough to have exposures to their amazing low vision program.
Where are you located?
I'm actually in rural New Hampshire, but I was at the VA in White River Junction and taught at Dartmouth for 22 years. So, I feel fortunate to have both a personal experience and, a long history and career in familiarity with low vision and blindness. And, you said something a few minutes ago that you had enough information after you learned yourself that you weren't terrified when you had that moment when you completely lost the vision in your other eye. And, that's the hope that I have for, every patient that I encounter who's losing their vision. And so for me, it's a passion, but I want to share that just as you do, and inform and talk and share with my colleagues. It's certainly part of what inspired me to serve on the Future in Sight board. And, something that I say to my residents all this time is, don't be afraid of patients losing vision, and don't be afraid of them going blind, because it will mean that you might not.
The patient.
Exactly. And it may mean that they don't have the emotional stamina to address it themselves. Like, doctors are humans too, and it's a journey for them. And I think, I've been in practice now 26 years, but there's not a day that doesn't go by where, I hesitate and make sure I'm not sort of transferring my hope or, try to use all the expertise that I have to change the trajectory or the hopes for a patient, and that I listen to them. And so, that's my perspective. That's part of the going blind journey that I've had, being fully sighted.
No, what you're talking about is huge, I think, because I think when I speak to general audiences, but especially when I speak to physician audiences, I say that we're all afraid of vision loss, but doctors, I think in particular, because for so many of them it represents failure to them. And I think when I speak to physicians, what I try to say is that sometimes, that's just the way it is. That's our trajectory, as you say, and, it's going to go, and you can't be sort of beating yourself up. And, but there's more to that patient than their vision. And, they still have a full life, without their vision. You want to help them find that and find out how to make the most of it. And if you're thinking that that's the end of their life, that's death, it's detrimental to the patient, and it's detrimental to the doctor, because there's, there are workarounds. I mean, like when every time I lost another chunk of vision, I used to become sort of apoplectic. And I'd say, oh God, what's the next chunk going to do? And what's going to happen? And I was just totally catastrophizing. And then one of the counselors in the film, I don't remember if he's in the shortened version or not, said to me, you can't be spending your life worrying about what is, what might be. You have to be dealing with what is, and if things change, then you deal with that. But in the meantime, do your best with what you got, and then if things change, you'll do your best with that. And it was a huge breakthrough for me. And so then when I would lose another chunk of vision, rather than going through my usual, oh my God, now what's next, I would say to myself, oh, that sucks. but has it really changed anything? Can I really not do anything I could do before? And at first the answer would be no. It's a little inconvenient maybe, but or not as good, but I can certainly do this, that, and the other. And then when it got to the point, oh, well, I really can't do this and that way, then I'd have to figure out, well, what is the way to do it? And then if it wasn't, then if I couldn't, then I have to find a workaround, but it's that, trying to find out how to do it as opposed to, or how to get to where you need to go, as opposed to concentrating on the barrier.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, we have a former client of Future Insight with us this evening. That's Stephanie Hurd, and I'd like to unmute her so she can join us for a little bit and speak to her experience as well. Stephanie, why don't you tell us a little bit about your vision loss journey?
Well, thank you, Courtney, and everyone. So I was born with a very rare eye condition, sort of the cousin, if you will, to retinitis pigmentosa, which was shown in the film. But I have Leber's congenital amaurosis, which often is early onset, looking in those terms of RP. So, but as a child, I saw quite a bit. I could, read regular print, ride a bike. I always say I could play hide and seek and actually find people. And my vision loss was very, very gradual, which in a way was a good thing because it was so gradual, right? But in a way it was also a constant challenge, right? Always, like you were saying, Joe, oh, what's the next chunk gonna mean? What do I have to do now? What do I have to learn? Where do I learn it? How do I adapt to this portion? It's just a journey. It's a journey, an ongoing journey, that I find that you learn to always having to adapt. You learn to be a self-advocate for sure, because if you don't learn to speak up for yourself and figure out what you need, how can others help you? Whether it's doctors knowing what is your acuity now? What are your symptoms? What's going on with you? Or mobility training or training in the home or anything like that is, accepting it for yourself will also help you and others to have not only expectations for yourself and your future, but others to have expectations of you. Right. No one's going to have expectations of you if you don't first try to find those for yourself. And that's not always easy for everybody. I mean, I feel like I was very fortunate to grow up in a home, where my family was very supportive instead of enabling, I guess I'd say. They were very supportive and encouraging me to do things, and they, would find opportunity for me, training, all that. So they gave me those skills, they gave me the optimism. So I really do credit my family in that case, but it's not always easy for people, depending on where their history is, what their past is. And that's where it's great, not only for the eye doctors to make those referrals, to encourage your patients to keep moving forward, whatever that low vision, spectrum is, but also for organizations like Future Insight, where I had gone to for help in learning the skills, that I wouldn't normally get. So I just think it's a combination. It is a team effort of self-organizations, eye doctors, whatever role models or family members you might have, always being a team. But, you always have to begin with you. You have to make the effort. You have to be willing. You have to, be constantly in the game.
Right, right. And what would you say to your experience, Stephanie, as a client of Future Insight? What was that like for you?
For me, it was good. I grew up in Maine, so by the time I came to New Hampshire, I had some, training and stuff from an agency in Maine. So when I came, I knew to look for Future Insight as well, right? Then New Hampshire Association for the Blind. And I felt very welcome. I think my first contact was probably, believe it or not, I was looking for a volunteer driver to take me water skiing. I found an opportunity to go water skiing, and I was looking for a ride. So that was kind of a pleasant beginning, right? It was kind of funsies and all that. But then it turned into, I did go to a peer support group back in the day where people in the room, can gather and you have that, while everybody's unique and we have our own stories, there's common threads, right? And what better way to be in a room full of people where you can share freely and privately with others who also, are going through some vision loss. So I did attend some of that. Orientation, mobility, key, right? So I moved to New Hampshire, whole other environment, pick you up, plop you down in a different place where you're living. So Future Insight, then New Hampshire Association of the Blind, was imperative on, giving me these building blocks and skills and orienting me to my community in New Hampshire. How am I going to get to the nearest store, bus stop, whatever I wanted to do. I think that at the time they'd even created a relief map of my area with different cross streets and things like that I could tactily feel with what's called wiki sticks. And so I could refer back to that. Nowadays we have technology to help us, but this was quite a long time ago. So definitely just all the people were fabulous. Just the skill building, keeping in touch, staying in touch to see how is it going now that we've, been working with you so long. And knowing that they're always there. It's, for some people, it might be a one and done. I just need a handheld magnifier. And other times, like myself, it's been a lifelong journey really of that vision loss. So always constantly needing a little tune-up.
What do you think about when you're ready to do something and when you're not quite ready to, just emotionally, you're just not ready to take that next step, or when you are, you know what I mean?
What do I think about that?
Yeah,
Emotional readiness.
Yeah,
I do think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Just like when you mentioned the cane, like a lot of people aren't ready for that white cane. And I can tell you, I probably should have used a white cane in high school, but I grew up in a little small town, so I was still in Maine.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to use that cane because that wasn't cool and I wasn't ready for that. So I didn't do it. But my break when I graduated and I moved away from home, then I used my cane because I felt like, this is a fresh start. I'm in a place where people don't really know me. I don't know them. So I'm just going to use my cane. And it was kind of liberating because then I realized, oh my gosh, I can get around and find things so much quicker and, more independent than trying to fudge it, and rely on muscle memory. But yeah, there's a period when you're not quite, emotionally ready. And sometimes you won't reach out and you need that time to accept it. And that's when it's great when organizations or family members or eye doctors, right, with these referrals can say, hey, you might need to hear it more than once, right? Me as a person with vision loss, I might need to be told more than once, hey, there's this great organization that can help you with your low vision. And if I'm still dealing with it, I might just be like, okay, thank you. And, I don't really do anything about it because I'm not ready. And then at my next visit or my next checkup or follow-up, they might say it again, oh, by the way, did you ever check out that organization that might be able to help you out? And by the third time, you might be, if you're reluctant, you might be ready to say, oh yeah, I think I'll try that, or if they give me a call, I will answer.
Right. Yeah, I always felt that, I have a good chunk of vision left, but I have a huge chunk that I don't have. And, but I felt that for a long time, I just felt it was pretentious to use a cane because, well, first I felt that it was worse for me to use a cane. I'd just trip over it. And then I felt it was sort of pretentious. And then I got into this netherworld. But then a few weeks ago, I fell down a flight of stairs that I didn't see. And I thought, well, it was time, if only just to remind myself that I didn't see very well. And today I had my first mobility, real mobility lesson, the long cane.
Yes.
And the instructor was so fabulous. I mean,
Mhm.
she was absolutely perfect for me.
Mm.
And I have a 12-year-old shepherd, and I've had shepherds all my life. And I'm going to need to get a dog. And shepherds don't live past, 14. 12 is usually, when they go, but she's going to go beyond that. Excuse me. And you need to, of course, be cane trained to get to qualify for a dog. And so this instructor, she was so great and just so practical in terms of what I needed to do. And she pointed, we're talking about what I could see and what I needed and what I didn't need. And she said, look, you need to be cane trained to get a dog, and you're going to need a dog. So whether we train you blindfolded or not blindfolded, it doesn't really make any difference, because you're going to have to be cane trained for the dog. And then when if we train you without the blindfold, then we can train you, with a blindfold for, later on, or not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it was like, what difference does it make? You need, this is what you need to get the dog, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And she sort of like destigmatized the whole thing. And it was a wonderful experience.
Well, that's wonderful, Joe. And it's actually a great segue, because we also have Beth Daisy on our panel this evening. She's the supervisor of occupational therapy at Future Insight. And I'd love to have her unmute and join us for a few minutes and speak to us a little bit about, what your role is at Future Insight and how you work with the clients.
Right. So thank you so much, Courtney, and thank you, Joe. And I really appreciate you joining us here tonight. So myself, as Courtney mentioned, I'm an occupational therapist. So what that means is that I work with individuals so that they can either gain, maintain, or restore their ability to do the things that they need or want to do. And so my team of occupational therapists will work on things such as reading or cooking or financial management, medication management. But what's really fantastic about Future Insight is that we have an entire team of individuals. So you heard some of these little snippets here and there. You heard Joe mention orientation and mobility. So yes, that's something that we offer. Stephanie was speaking to us before and talking about the peer support groups. So we have licensed clinical social workers who can address some of that adjustment to blindness, right? So that hopefully helping somebody navigate that transition to be able to accept their journey so that they can get more help. We also have the teachers for the visually impaired working with those kiddos in the school system. And so we've got group activities to try to address those social needs. And so really we try to look at the person as an entire individual. I believe it was one of the doctors in your film, Joe. He had such a great quote. He said, "We're dealing with the whole person." And, we really are. And so, we really want to see them not just as a diagnosis and as a visual acuity, but we want to see them as a whole person and really try to make sure that we're meeting, not just one need, but all of their needs. So we have a team of individuals, and I know that we have guests from other parts of the country. And so, while I'm speaking very specifically about what we offer here at Future Insight, I'm sure a lot of our other programs throughout the country that work in low vision are also offering a lot of these same interventions and opportunities.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And Dr. Dorothy, who's still on with us, I wanted to come back to her for a second and ask, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that you think eye doctors make? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I'd like to hear some of your insight.
Well, sure. I'm happy to pick on somebody that's not me. Stephanie actually said something really important, and that is that you can't just offer opportunities and options to your patients once. You have to repeat the offering. Again, you can't be afraid yourself as a doctor or hesitant and, hand someone this little brochure or have a 2-second conversation because, you've come to the end of your medical interventions. So repeat, repeat, repeat. Ask patients who they have as part of their support team. You need to know that to make sure you're, in fact, creating the right referral. I don't cut a lot of slack if you just can't take a few minutes to do that. You're really doing a disservice to your patient, because eye care should be circular, right? There should be this continuum of care that happens from prevention all the way through rehabilitation. Don't give up on your patients.
Yeah, may I
Definitely don't give up on your patients.
May I add to that?
Yeah.
I think that very often, like when I speak to residents, when I do a screening and then pizzas and then a conversation, and people say, "Oh, this is so wonderful. I never get to talk to my patients," and because they're so tightly scheduled, and everybody hates it, and it's never addressed. And I think that's unfortunate and should be addressed. But doctors don't seem to talk to their patients about their life outside of the examining room.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be extremely helpful if they said, "Are you having problems with reading? Are you having problems with cooking? Are you having problems with any kind of navigation?" Just so that they had an idea if the state of their eyeball is affecting the quality of their life. And I'm not hearing that reported from patients I've spoken to about in terms of their interactions with their doctors. And I think it'd be enormously helpful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And, that's something that I hear as well. I have a slightly different kind of practice. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but, I'm rejecting hurry up medicine. I reject that concept. And I think we need to collectively do that. If you must take the time when someone is losing a portion or in fact all of one of their most important senses. I had a 96-year-old World War II veteran today, and I had to ask him. He knew that he was a referral from somebody else. He knew that he had poor vision. He's completely blind in one eye and extremely low vision in the other eye. And I said, well, and he wanted a third opinion. I said, well, your vision is what it is, but tell me what you want to do. Like, what do you like to do? And he says, well, what do you mean? He didn't even know what I meant by that, because he had not been asked that. I said, well, what do you like to do? I'm like, what are you doing with yourself at home? Right. And he's a history buff, of course, right? And he went down this long list of all these books that he liked to read. Right. And I said, oh, well, do you have books on tape? Or, we call it books on tape. Of course, now with Kindles and iPads, the technology is stepped up amazingly. And he's like, well, sometimes I sort of try to look at my wife's iPad. I said, you can get basically every book you can think of auditorially on the iPad. And he was like, are you kidding me? And like, he just kept going on, like right. That made the rest of his day. And just that one little thing, right? If you just give one little thing, I
just found out you can get it for free from the public library.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So those are the kinds of things that, I hope and encourage other doctors to share. I will add also too that, optometry interfaces with about 200 million people a year, and they are the low vision specialists. They tend to get the patients back after, they may start with the patients, they may refer for, tertiary care for surgical interventions, but often they get the patients back. And I think they do, quite frankly, a very good job in general of informing patients, keeping them on the path towards adaptation as things change. And they're key, especially, in the United States, they're key in that vision loss journey. And they tend to see patients for a lifetime and tend to get to know their patients, tend to have more time to spend with their patients. And I would be remiss if I didn't, talk about, these 42,000 doctors that I think really are the ones that are the bridge. So, I spend lots of time talking to my colleagues there.
That's
But it seems to be less animosity between the ophthalmologist and the optometrist.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of old fashioned now. The healthcare is under too much stress for that to happen. And, I think in certain, New York, Boston, there was some of that back in the day, but, we're all on the same team now.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. I mean, we are getting a little bit close to the end of our session. There was a question or comment in the chat from one of our attendees who was saying, I need counseling for coping with my loss. So for coping with my loss, are there doctors who have visual loss training in order to understand my situation? And Beth Daisy, who is also on our panel, was right on the answer. And it sounds like the answer is absolutely, right, Beth?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was direct messaging that individual. And so we're going to make sure that, that they get the resources that they need. They're out of state, but we're happy to put people in touch with the appropriate folks. So yeah, absolutely. Great question.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, I do have to start to wind things down a little bit. I hate to, because we're having such robust conversation, but it is getting later in the evening. We want people to be able to get on with their evening plans.
And Courtney, if anybody wants to get in touch with me directly, my email is lovett@lovettproductions.com, and they can feel free to just get in touch directly.
That's wonderful. I'm actually typing it into the chat right now. Lovett@lovettproductions.com if anybody wants to get in touch with Joe. Before we officially close out, I do want to give the mic back to our CEO and President of Future Insight, and that would be Dr. Randy Pierce. I'm going to bring him up for you all now. And go ahead.
Thank you for that, Courtney. So I want to specifically, obviously, I'm very appreciative, Joe, for the partnership, for the film you put together, but I really want to take a moment to thank the folks who chose to join us tonight. For whatever the various reasons that you chose to, there's a lot of ways all of us could have spent our Monday nights. Beautiful weather here in New Hampshire, but we chose to be here and you chose to be here. And for many people who we might help, there's limited choices as they try to deal with the challenges their low vision presents to them. And I emphasize that just because I had marvelous healthcare. I really did. My Dr. Dagianis in Nashua recognized my problem immediately, probably saved my sight for 11 years. And I started by telling you right there was 2 months delay where I didn't go see anybody. That's not long. I'm pretty lucky that I got referred that quickly to start getting the services that started changing my world. But there's just in New Hampshire, there's 22,000 people who likely have need at some level. And absolutely, we've served a number of those folks. But the sad part is there's a number we haven't. And the reason I'm passionate about what this means is because obviously it's personal for me. I think what would have happened when I first lost my sight, when I'm fearful, when I'm helpless, when I'm hopeless, if I didn't get that referral? And the answer frightens me a little bit because I don't know. I'd like to think fairly strong, fairly determined that I might have gotten there, but I'm not sure because a little help, whether it's the counseling nudge, the coaching nudge, the mentorship, or the skill training, we all need enough exposure, enough encouragement to start working forward, to realize, right, that I like to think I have sight loss, not vision loss. I like to think I have tremendous vision, and there's a huge difference between those two things. all that said, where does this start? It starts with a referral, not just from a doctor to our organization or to an appropriate organization, though those can help that process tremendously. It's probably the fastest path. But sometimes the world has a blind spot to what the ramifications of low vision are. And we lie to ourselves and hide from ourselves, but the world doesn't see it either. And so help the world know. Help folks who have that sight impairment understand there are options and opportunities, and they can have their lives transformed. They can do anything that's important to them. If they're willing to put in the work, if they're willing to get the right training, they may have to do it differently, but there are ways to get things done. And maybe you're sharing it with a family member who's going to encounter that, or maybe you're sharing it with another doctor. The trick is share. I can't see with my eyes, but I believe in 3 big C's, letter C's. We need to connect, we need to communicate, and we need to collaborate. Because what we love to tell all the folks that we can serve in all ways, from the doctors that are going to help us there, from the family members to the individuals that we help along the way, there is a better future in sight if you just take the right approach. And we're here, but we can't do it alone. We need that partnership. We need that support. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you for the next step that you may take in helping us share this and helping us ensure that there isn't somebody lacking services because any of us missed the opportunity. Thank you.
As Randy said, thank you so much for joining us, everyone in the audience, all of our wonderful panelists for all the great insights you gave us.